Oh, and that was a photograph of what our dinner was tonight. It was Chana Dal, and that's actually they're little split chickpeas, and they take longer to cook like a lentil. Sometimes they'll refer to them as being a lentil because they're like little baby chickpeas instead of full size, but they're split. They're an Indian dish, and I prepared them according to this recipe I found online with a few changes. I can't put everything in that. I don't even have everything they call to put in there, but I put in everything that I had that was in it, and it actually turned out very tasty. We had it over rice and had sweet potato fries with it, and had a salad that I didn't get the picture of, but it was called Chana Dal, and I would recommend looking into it. It was not difficult to make. While the chickpeas were cooking, I fixed the sauce separately, and when the chickpeas were done, I just stirred it all together, and it was done. Hi. So, I haven't shared anything the last couple of days. I've just been taking it all in and digesting and working on my scripture and watching the news and everything that's going on with the coronavirus. Actually, I don't watch the news much. I don't really want to watch it, but I did watch it tonight for a little bit. Just kind of know what's going on, but I would prefer to keep my eyes fixed on God right now and pray and trust Him to bring a resolution to what's going on in the world, and trust Him to use this time to reach people's hearts. And that's, He didn't send it, but He'll certainly take advantage of where people are in their searching to reveal Himself to them. So that's one of the things I pray about, that people will seek Him and that they'll find Him. So what's interesting to me, and I just heard, this is something I heard on the news tonight. Apparently there was a church in Florida that held a huge service on Sunday against orders for gathering, and the pastor's been arrested as a result of doing that, because they think it was very careless of him to do that and have this possibility of exposing all these people to the virus. And I had read about a church out in the state of Washington where the choir decided to practice, and there was like 100 people in the choir. Was it 100 or 60? Like 160 came. There's 100 people, but 60 came. That was it. 100 people in the choir, 60 came to practice. They were careful not to hug and shake hands, and kept a respectful distance, whatever. But they sang together for a couple hours, and I forget, 25 or 40, maybe it was 25. I should have gotten my details right. Anyhow, there's a lot of people who ended up getting the coronavirus. 5 are in the hospital and 2 have died as a result of going to their choir practice. And I am sure, because I've seen this happen in many cases in churches where somebody is sick and they think, well, God's going to protect me, or they know other people are sick. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to be protected, or God will protect other people. They kind of throw caution to the wind, thinking God's just going to shelter them because their heart's in the right place, type of thing. And I've seen that happen with missionaries. I've seen that happen with people at church over the years. And it doesn't matter what denomination we belong to. There's always somebody who thinks that showing up sick is okay because God will protect. And it's not that God can't protect, but I find the same people who say these things are not necessarily walking in a strong enough faith to manifest that. Okay, if they're actually sick, they already aren't manifesting the faith to keep them well. So they probably don't have the same faith. They may believe it, but they don't have the faith. And it's really interesting, because this is something that was an eye-opener for me. This is something that I realized that I believed things, but I still wasn't seeing them happen. And that it takes another level of belief and faith in order for that belief and faith to be manifested in our lives. There are some things that I have seen manifested in terms of healing in myself or healing for others, but it's not everywhere yet. And that's one of the things I think that we need to be aware of, is that we need to work and allow God to work. It's meant to be a joint relationship for our maturity to come through. We need to be mature in our faith so that his healing can manifest in us and through us for others. Of course, the news doesn't want to show good clips of things, but the pastor was saying, well, don't we believe we can lay hands on the sick and they shall recover? And that is true. But I want to read something to you. This is when Jesus had gone into the desert and Satan came to tempt him. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. And Jesus answered him, it is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. And that is my concern here. It's not that we as Christians don't wish to be together and, do we see it as a sign of weakness that we don't come together, like we're afraid of the virus or something like that. But if we're not to put God in that position. It's one thing if the world puts us in that position, but we're not to put ourselves in that position. If they had no choice but to be put together, there was some persecution going on and they were rounded all up and put in this one place together and there was a disease going around, then I would, then that's our time to trust God to protect us from those things, because it's out of our control. But when it's in our control, I believe we're being a little bit careless, and we're challenging God to say, well, you watch over me and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that's kind of not fair. And it's not fair to put that on God if you're not really walking in that kind of faith. So if you're somebody who typically goes to the doctor when you're sick, or have not seen anyone get healed and have not seen yourself get healed spiritually, then I wouldn't be walking around very cavalier saying, oh, God's going to take care of me. If you haven't trusted him to take care of you up to this point, it's not fair to other people to be spreading disease around if you're not walking in that faith now. I don't know. I guess this is a little bit of a harsh lesson, but I'm holed up in my house and I have seen people healed, but I'm not going to just be careless about it. If there's some important reason why I have to really leave the house, and if I saw somebody sick, I'd pray for them. But until then, I'm trying to be respectful of others because I'm not walking in perfect faith yet. I'm getting there. I'm working on it. So anyhow, what do you think on that? Am I all wet? Am I wrong? Am I right? What are your thoughts on that? We each need to be convinced in our own hearts that we're doing the right thing. And I look at Jesus and what he does. It's interesting. Okay, this will give you a little off lesson here. In the case of Satan tempting him, Satan came at him with scripture. But Jesus knew the higher authority of scripture. He knew what was even more important than the scripture Satan quoted at him. Satan said, oh, God's going to take care of you. He's assigned his angels to you. But Jesus also said, do not put the Lord your God to the test. And he knew that was a higher, more important lesson. Just like Jesus has only given us 2 commands now. We don't even have the 10 commandments anymore. I mean, we do, but they're not called that because now we have 2 commands. It's to love God and to love your neighbor. That's our 2 commands now. And of course, the 10 commandments fall underneath that. But, you know, he knows how to get to the essence of what's important. And I think we need to be working on getting to the essence of what's important. Use this time instead of trying to show the world how much you know and maybe don't know. I mean, on one hand, I give them credit. I mean, I wish we could do the same thing. I wish we could do the same thing and come together, but I think it's a little preemptive. I think it's a little early for that yet. I think we should be staying home and building our faith and reading our scripture and letting it change us and strengthen us so that we're ready when it's really called upon us to be ready. When we're really called, when we are called to stand up for our faith, when it's really important, let's be ready with that. And wash our hands. And you know, there's a lot of places in the scripture they talk about washing your hands and avoiding people who are sick. There's a lot of that in the Old Testament. Of course, they don't talk about that in the New Testament because they are beyond that. But we're working on it. We've got to get ourselves more mature. I don't think we're anywhere near where they were back then. All those gifts and things that were given to the church in Corinth, that was because they were immature. They needed to see things. They needed to see healings and stuff like that in order to be convinced. And the other churches didn't need that. They were already convinced without all the works and wonders. Interesting, isn't it? All right, just some thoughts for the day. We will catch up with you tomorrow.